First contact. Zora adjusted her breathing apparatus as she entered the vast botanical laboratory aboard the Concordia space station. At 24 cycles old, she was the youngest Viridian botanist ever assigned to a joint human-alien research facility. Her emerald skin caught the artificial sunlight, its delicate, almost translucent quality a stark contrast to the sturdy human technicians moving equipment nearby. "Need any assistance with those specimens, botanist Zora?" called out a rumbling voice. Lieutenant Pax, one of the human security officers, stood at the entrance. His muscular frame, nearly twice her size, cast a long shadow across the laboratory floor. Humans had always fascinated Zora, so physically imposing yet technologically behind Viridian advancements by several centuries. "No, thank you," Zora replied in carefully practiced English, her dual vocal cords creating a musical quality humans found pleasant. "Just routine examination of the hybridization results today." She moved deeper into the laboratory, past the organized rows of experimental plants. The alliance between Earth and Viridia had been mutually beneficial for both species over the past decade. Humans provided raw materials and their remarkable adaptability, while Viridians shared their advanced biological science and ecological engineering. Zora paused before a cluster of bioluminescent flowers. Their genetic structure had been modified to respond to sound vibrations, changing colors to create visual representations of music or speech, potentially revolutionary technology for deep space communication. As she leaned closer to examine a particularly responsive bloom, she noticed unusual movement among the petals. Something small darted out, hovering directly before her large, almond-shaped eyes. The creature resembled an earth insect, perhaps a bee or butterfly, but larger, with an iridescent exoskeleton that shifted through impossible colors. Its wings created a hypnotic pattern that seemed to bend light around them. "You're not in our catalog," she whispered, reaching slowly for her specimen container. The station maintained strict protocols about unidentified lifeforms. The insect-like creature darted forward with startling speed. Before Zora could react, it landed on her neck just below her breathing apparatus. A sharp, burning sensation shot through her nervous system as the creature's stinger penetrated her skin, then it rapidly disappeared through a nearby ventilation shaft. "Ancestral stars!" Zora gasped, pressing her slender fingers against the sting site. A small, pulsing mark had already formed, glowing with a faint golden light that didn't match any bioluminescence she was familiar with. Not wanting to cause alarm or disrupt her work schedule over what appeared to be a minor incident, she applied a cooling gel from her medical kit and continued her examinations. According to all her training, most insect-like creatures aboard the station were harmless to Viridians, their biology was too different for cross-species reactions. By dinner cycle, Zora had nearly forgotten about the sting. She sat alone in the communal dining area, methodically consuming her specialized nutrient solution while observing humans enjoying their more varied cuisine. Lieutenant Pax waved from across the room where he sat with other security personnel, their laughter echoing against the metallic walls. That night, Zora prepared for rest in her private quarters. Removing her work uniform, she noticed the sting site had changed. An intricate, golden pattern had spread several centimeters from the original point, and the area felt unusually warm to her touch. Concerned but not alarmed, she applied more cooling gel and documented the reaction in her personal medical log. Her sleep cycle was disturbed by vivid, unusual dreams. She found herself soaring through Earth's forests and fields, environments she had only studied in simulations. She perceived flowers and plants from perspectives she had never experienced, feeling connected to them in ways that transcended scientific understanding. Their life energy pulsed around her, through her, becoming part of her consciousness. At 3:47 station time, Zora awoke violently, her body burning with fever. The golden pattern had spread across her chest and up her neck, pulsing in rhythm with her 3 hearts. When she attempted to call for medical assistance, her voice failed. The room spun as she stumbled toward the door, her vision fragmenting into kaleidoscopic patterns. Emergency, she managed to whisper into her communication device before collapsing to the floor. The last sensation she registered was her hand glowing with an intense golden light, illuminating her quarters like a miniature sun. Lieutenant Pax discovered her 2 hours later during a routine security sweep prompted by her quarters' environmental systems reporting abnormal temperature fluctuations. Her body temperature had reached critical levels, and the golden pattern now covered most of her left side. He carried her slender form effortlessly to the medical bay, where Dr. Elon Novak immediately began treatment protocols for unknown xenobiological reactions. "I've never encountered anything remotely similar to this," the doctor murmured while scanning Zora's changing cellular structure. "Whatever stung her isn't causing an allergic reaction, it's fundamentally altering her DNA at the molecular level." As the station's morning cycle began, information spread quickly throughout Concordia. Something unprecedented was happening to the young Viridian botanist, and as Zora lay unconscious, her cells continued to transform, restructuring and evolving, preparing her body for something no one aboard the station could possibly anticipate. Director Vora, the senior Viridian official aboard Concordia, examined the medical scans with growing concern. "Has Earth Command been notified?" she asked Dr. Novak. "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "They're sending a specialized xenobiology team. ETA 14 hours. And Viridia? The High Council has been informed. They're dispatching a medical cruiser. Arrival expected in 3 days." Director Vora's facial membranes fluttered, a sign of deep distress among her species. "Has the creature been located?" "Negative," Lieutenant Pax reported from the doorway. "Security teams have conducted 3 complete sweeps. Whatever it was, it's either hiding or—" He hesitated. "Or what, Lieutenant?" Director Vora prompted. "Or it's no longer aboard the station." Dr. Novak looked up from Zora's latest readings. "That's impossible. Nothing has left Concordia in the past 24 hours. All shuttles and escape pods are accounted for." "Then it's still here," Pax concluded, his hand instinctively moving to the stun pistol at his hip. "And I intend to find it." As the three discussed the situation, none noticed the subtle changes occurring in the medical bay's small decorative plants. Their leaves had begun turning toward Zora's unconscious form, as if drawn by an invisible force. Beneath the soil, their root systems grew at an accelerated rate, extending toward her biobed. In the ventilation system above, hidden from all sensors, the luminescent insect observed. Its compound eyes reflected the golden light now emanating from Zora's skin. The first transformation had begun. Soon, the harmony would have its guardian. 72 hours passed with Zora remaining in a comatose state. The golden patterns covering her skin pulsated with increasing intensity, occasionally releasing microscopic particles that floated in the air like golden pollen before dissipating. Dr. Novak had been awake for nearly 48 hours straight, analyzing samples and consulting with specialists from both Earth and Viridia via quantum communication. The results defied all known science. "Her cellular structure is reorganizing itself," he explained to Commander Reed, the human officer in charge of Concordia. "It's as if her DNA is being rewritten, but not randomly, there's purpose, direction." "Is she dying?" the commander asked bluntly. "That's the most extraordinary part, Dr. Novak replied, displaying a holographic representation of Zora's life signs. "By all measurable standards, she's healthier than before. Her immune system has strengthened tenfold. Her muscle density has increased without corresponding mass gain. Her neural activity suggests her brain is processing information at rates we can barely measure. So whatever this is, it's not killing her. It's upgrading her." "That's one interpretation," the doctor admitted. "Though I'm reluctant to anthropomorphize an unknown biological process." In the corner of the medical bay, Lieutenant Pax maintained his vigilant watch. Despite having been officially relieved hours ago, he remained Something about the young Viridian botanist's situation troubled him deeply, not just professional concern, but something more personal he couldn't articulate. As midnight approached on the fourth day, Zora's eyes suddenly opened. Unlike the typical Viridian eye with its solid purple coloration, her eyes now swirled with golden light, resembling miniature galaxies. "She's conscious," Dr. Novak called out, rushing to her side. Zora sat up with impossible fluidity, as if gravity affected her differently now. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that hadn't been present before. "The chrysalis has awakened," she said, though the word seemed not entirely her own. "The harmony approaches." Then she collapsed back onto the biobed, once again unconscious, leaving the medical staff bewildered by her cryptic pronouncement. Lieutenant Pax moved closer to the biobed. "What does that mean? What's the harmony?" Dr. Novak shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." As they spoke, the station's botanical laboratory remained empty and dark. Inside one of the experimental hybridization chambers, the plants had begun to change, their structures evolving in ways that mirrored the golden patterns on Zora's skin. Metamorphosis. Zora's eyelids fluttered open 5 days after her collapse. The bright lights of the medical bay made her wince as strange sensations coursed through her transformed body. Everything felt different, sharper, more vibrant, as if she had been experiencing life through a filter that had suddenly been removed. "She's awake," Dr. Novak announced, moving quickly to her bedside. The human doctor's face showed a mixture of scientific fascination and genuine concern. "How do you feel, Zora?" "Heavy," Zora replied, her voice resonating with new harmonics. "And hungry." Lieutenant Pax stood nearby, his usual confident demeanor replaced by cautious vigilance. His hand rested near his stun pistol, though he seemed conflicted about whether he considered her a patient or a potential threat. Zora attempted to sit up and gasped. The movement felt too easy, as if her muscles had gained extraordinary strength overnight. Looking down at her arms, she noticed her normally emerald skin now had a luminescent golden pattern coursing through it like flowing rivers of light. "What's happening to me?" she asked, holding her hands up to examine them. Dr. Novak exchanged glances with Dr. Thelix, the station's Viridian xenobiologist who had been called in to study her case. The tall, slender alien approached with his data tablet in hand. "We believe you were stung by some kind of hybrid organism, Dr. Thelix explained, his voice carrying the distinctive musical quality of all Viridians, though lacking the new harmonics present in Zora's speech. "It appears to be part earth insect, part something entirely unknown. The venom has integrated with your cellular structure in ways we've never documented before." Zora's 3 hearts raced. "Is it dangerous?" "That's what we're trying to determine," Dr. Novak said, studying her vitals on the monitoring equipment. "Your body isn't fighting the changes, it's adapting to them. Your muscle density has increased by 67% since yesterday. Your skin has developed a new bioluminescent layer unlike anything in our xenobiology database. Your neural activity is off the charts." Director Vora entered the medical bay, her formal diplomatic robes indicating she had come directly from a conference call with the Viridian High Council. Her normally stoic expression couldn't hide her concern upon seeing the young botanist's transformation. "Zora, how are your senses?" Director Vora asked, her slender fingers checking various medical readouts. "Sharper," Zora admitted, closing her eyes momentarily to focus. "I can hear conversations from 3 compartments away. I can smell." She paused, inhaling deeply, the experimental hybrid orchids in the botanical laboratory. "Someone moved them to Section 4B. The medical team exchanged alarmed looks. "That's on the other side of the station," Lieutenant Pax whispered. "We need to decide whether to attempt removing the venom compounds from her system," Dr. Novak said gravely. "If we wait much longer, they might be too integrated to safely extract." "No," Zora said firmly, surprising herself with her certainty. I don't think we should remove it. That may be the venom affecting your judgment, Director Vora warned, her facial membranes fluttering with concern. Commander Reed entered the medical bay, his weathered face showing the strain of the past few days managing the crisis. Security teams have searched the entire station. No sign of the creature that stung her. We've sealed off the botanical laboratory until further notice. Dr. Thelix approached with new test results displayed on his tablet. Commander, you should see this. The venom isn't just changing her physically, it's enhancing her. Her cellular regeneration rate is unprecedented in either human or Viridian physiology. As if to demonstrate, Zora reached for a cup of water on the bedside table. Her movements were too quick, too fluid. The cup shattered in her grip. I'm sorry, she gasped, staring at the broken pieces. But more shocking than the broken cup was her hand, completely uncut despite the sharp ceramic shards. Impossible, Director Vora murmured. Viridians don't possess this kind of physical resilience. Dr. Thelix handed her a metal stress ball used by the human crew for exercise. Try this. Zora squeezed, and the metal dented under her fingers as easily as if it were clay. Her strength has increased at least tenfold, Dr. Thelix calculated, making notes on his tablet. And that golden pattern on her skin, it appears to be some kind of organic armor. That night, alone in her monitored medical room, Zora dreamed of Earth forests again. But this time, the dreams were more vivid, more real. She saw flowers blooming in accelerated time, felt roots growing deep into soil, experienced the sun's energy being converted to life-sustaining nutrients. She witnessed the intimate dance between pollinators and blossoms, the exchange of genetic information, the silent communication between different species of plants through underground mycorrhizal networks. She woke with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the beauty and complexity of it all. The golden patterns on her skin pulsed with her emotion, illuminating the darkened room. The next morning, Dr. Novak discovered her standing by the window, staring out at the stars. I can feel them, she said without turning. Feel what? The doctor asked, approaching cautiously. The plants in the botanical laboratory. They're calling to me. Her voice became urgent. They're afraid. Without proper care, some of the more delicate hybrids are dying. Dr. Novak checked his tablet. You're right. The environmental controls in the lab have been fluctuating since we sealed it off. But how could you possibly know that? Zora turned, her eyes now flecked with swirling gold. I'm not sick, doctor. I'm changing. And I think it's supposed to happen. As if to emphasize her point, she placed her hand on a small potted plant in the room, a simple earth fern kept for oxygen production. Under her touch, the plant suddenly grew, unfurling new fronds and doubling in size within seconds. Dr. Novak stepped back, astonished. How did you do that? Zora smiled, a strange confidence filling her. I don't know. But I think the insect chose me for a reason. Unknown to either of them, outside the medical bay window, a luminescent insect hovered, watching. Its translucent wings hummed with purpose as it observed the changing alien woman. 5 more identical creatures joined it, their bodies pulsing with the same golden light that flowed through Zora's veins. Meanwhile, in the station's command center, Commander Reed was receiving a transmission from Earth Central Command. The situation has been classified Omega-level priority, stated Admiral Hemmings, her stern face filling the communication screen. We're sending a specialized research team aboard the ECS Prometheus. Estimated arrival, 36 hours. With all due respect, Admiral, Commander Reed replied, we already have top xenobiologists from both Earth and Viridia studying the situation. Dr. Novak is. This goes beyond standard scientific inquiry, Commander, the Admiral cut him off. The potential applications of this transformation could have significant implications for interstellar security. After the transmission ended, Commander Reed sat back in his chair, troubled. The Prometheus wasn't a science vessel, it was a military corvette, designed for special operations. Whatever was happening to Zora had attracted attention far beyond normal scientific curiosity. 1 week after the sting, Zora stood in the testing chamber lifting a cargo container that weighed over 500 kilograms. Her slender arms, now streaked with intricate golden patterns, showed no strain whatsoever. The observation room was packed with scientists and officials, all watching in amazement. "That's 15 times what a Viridian should be able to lift," Dr. Thelix whispered to Dr. Novak. The human botanist had become fascinated by Zora's connection to plant life. "And look at her skin." Zora's emerald skin now had a permanent golden glow, pulsing slightly with her heartbeat. When she set down the container, tiny golden particles floated around her like pollen, dissipating in the air. Zora's emerald skin now had a permanent golden glow, pulsing slightly with her heartbeat. When she set down the container, tiny golden particles floated around her like pollen, dissipating in the air. "Test complete," announced Dr. Novak. "Zora, how do you feel?" "Strong," she replied simply. "When can I return to the botanical laboratory?" "The plants need me." Chancellor Zoran, a senior Viridian official who had arrived yesterday from their homeworld, stepped forward. His traditional blue ceremonial armor contrasted sharply with the station's utilitarian environment. "Out of the question," he stated firmly. "The High Council has ordered your immediate return to Viridia. This transformation must be studied in our controlled facilities, away from potential contamination." Zora frowned, something inside her resisting this command. "I belong here. Something is happening that I don't fully understand yet, but it's connected to this station." Before Chancellor Zoran could argue further, the station's emergency alarm blared. Red lights flashed as Commander Reed's voice came over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. We have a critical malfunction in the atmospheric regulation systems. All non-essential staff evacuate to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." The observation room erupted in controlled chaos. Dr. Novak activated his communicator. "What's happening?" Chief Engineer Valera responded through static. "Primary and backup air purification systems are failing simultaneously. Atmospheric scrubbers are contaminated with an unknown pathogen. We have maybe 2 hours of emergency oxygen before levels become critical." Zora closed her eyes, suddenly feeling a strange awareness spread through her consciousness. "The plants," she whispered. "I can feel them dying." Without waiting for permission, she sprinted toward the botanical laboratory, moving with inhuman speed. Lieutenant Pax followed, struggling to keep pace. "Zora, wait. That section is sealed off." But Zora had already reached the heavy security door. With one powerful pull, she tore the magnetic lock free and entered the laboratory. Inside, the plants were wilting, their leaves turning brown as the unknown pathogen spread through the irrigation system. Lieutenant Pax arrived breathless. "The contamination must have reached here too." "I can fix this," Zora said with quiet certainty. She approached the central bed of oxygen-producing plants and knelt beside them. "These hybrids can purify air 3 times more efficiently than the mechanical scrubbers if properly stimulated. But they're dying," Pax pointed out. "And even healthy, they couldn't produce enough oxygen for the whole station." Zora placed her hands on the soil. "They will now." Golden light flowed from her fingertips into the growing medium. The dying plants suddenly straightened, their color returning, leaves expanding. Before Pax's astonished eyes, they began growing rapidly, spreading across the bed and climbing upward. New buds formed and opened within seconds, releasing visible waves of purified oxygen. "Impossible," Pax whispered. Zora's eyes glowed golden as she worked. "The insect showed me in my dreams. These plants have potential beyond their original design." Throughout the laboratory, other plants began responding to her influence, growing and evolving. Within minutes, oxygen levels in the laboratory had increased by 300%. The golden particles emanating from Zora's skin spread through the ventilation system, neutralizing the pathogen that had corrupted the mechanical scrubbers. Commander Reed's voice came through Pax's communicator. Engineering reports oxygen levels rising throughout the station. What's happening down there? It's Zora, Pax replied, watching as golden pollen-like particles spread through the ventilation system. She's supercharging the plants, making them produce oxygen at unprecedented rates. 2 hours later, the crisis was over. The station systems had been stabilized, with Zora's enhanced plants now supplementing the repaired air purification system. In the command center, Chancellor Zoran watched the security footage of Zora's actions with narrowed eyes. "This changes everything," he muttered to Commander Reed. "Her abilities are far more valuable, and potentially dangerous, than we anticipated." Meanwhile, Zora sat exhausted in the center of the botanical laboratory, surrounded by lush, evolved plant life. Some species had changed so dramatically they were barely recognizable, developing new features and capabilities. "How did you know what to do?" Dr. Novak asked, scanning the transformed plants with his handheld analyzer. Zora touched a flower that seemed to lean toward her like a pet seeking affection. "I didn't. We did it together, me and the plants." She hesitated. "And something else guiding us." "What do you mean?" Pax prompted, kneeling beside her. "Something that's been with me since the sting," Zora admitted. "I think the insect wasn't just a random creature. It was a messenger." High above them, hidden in the ventilation shaft, the 6 luminescent insects watched, their bodies grown larger, their intelligence expanding along with Zora's transformation. Soon it would be time for the next phase. Unbeknownst to anyone aboard Concordia, the ECS Prometheus had increased speed. Instead of 36 hours, it would arrive in 18, carrying a team with objectives far different from scientific research. Revelation. News of Zora's transformation and her role in saving Concordia spread quickly throughout the station. Within hours, she had become something of a local legend among both human and Viridian crew members. Many approached her with a mixture of awe and apprehension as she moved through the corridors, the golden patterns on her skin pulsing gently with each step. "The plants in hydroponics section 7 need more phosphorus," she told a startled agricultural technician as she passed. Later that day, the technician discovered she was right, the nutrient solution had been improperly balanced, a problem that would have resulted in crop failure if left uncorrected. Commander Reed had reluctantly allowed Zora limited freedom to move about the station, though Lieutenant Pax remained her constant shadow. The security officer maintained a professional distance, but Zora could sense his growing fascination with her condition. "You don't need to follow me everywhere," she told him as they entered the observation deck. "I'm not going to sprout wings and fly away." Pax raised an eyebrow. "Can you do that?" Zora laughed, the sound carrying musical harmonics that made nearby plants lean toward her. "Not yet, but who knows? Yesterday I couldn't hear conversations 3 decks away." They stood together at the vast viewing window, staring out at the stars. The Taurus Nebula spread before them in a panorama of cosmic dust and newborn stars, its swirling colors reflecting off the golden patterns on Zora's skin. "The ECS Prometheus will dock in 6 hours, Pax said quietly. "Admiral Hemmings is sending a specialized team to study your condition." Zora turned to him, her eyes swirling with golden light. "You don't believe that's their only purpose?" It wasn't a question. Pax hesitated, then shook his head. "The Prometheus isn't a research vessel. It's outfitted for special operations. The team they're sending," I recognized some of the names on the manifest. "They're from the Bioadaptive Warfare Division. They want to weaponize what's happening to me," Zora concluded. "I don't know that for certain," Pax admitted. "But I thought you should be prepared." Zora placed a hand on the transparent aluminum window. "Thank you for telling me. It seems I have less time than I thought." "Time for what?" Before she could answer, Zora stiffened. Her eyes widened as her attention turned inward, listening to something only she could hear. "They're coming," she whispered. "Who? The Prometheus?" "No. The Harmony. They're gathering." In that moment, the station's lights flickered briefly. When they stabilized, Zora was already moving with preternatural speed toward the botanical laboratory, leaving Pax struggling to keep up. By the time he reached the laboratory, Zora stood in the center of the transformed space. The plants had continued to evolve since her intervention during the atmospheric crisis. Vines with luminescent leaves crawled along the walls, forming intricate patterns that mirrored the markings on her skin. Flowers with impossible geometries bloomed and closed in rhythmic pulses. But most shocking of all were the insects, dozens of them now, hovering in a spiraling formation above Zora's head. Their bodies glowed with the same golden light that emanated from her skin. "What are they?" Pax asked, his hand instinctively moving to his stun pistol. "Don't," Zora warned. "They mean no harm. They're messengers, and I'm finally beginning to understand their message." The largest of the insects detached from the formation and landed on Zora's outstretched palm. Its compound eyes met hers, and a silent communication passed between them. The golden patterns on her skin flared brightly, temporarily blinding Pax. When he could see again, Zora's expression had changed, her face filled with wonder and dawning comprehension. "What did it tell you?" Pax asked. "Everything," she replied. "The Harmony isn't just these creatures, it's a cosmic consciousness, a network of life that spans galaxies. They're symbiotic facilitators, seeking out species with potential to become guardians of life." Guardians? Against what? Before Zora could answer, Chancellor Zoran burst into the laboratory with 4 Viridian security officers. They froze at the sight of the insect swarm. "What is the meaning of this?" Zoran demanded, his voice cold with authority. "You were instructed to remain in the medical bay for observation." The insects reacted to his hostility, their formation tightening defensively. "Chancellor, please," Zora said calmly. "These beings aren't a threat. They're trying to help us. This station is under quarantine by order of the Viridian High Council," Zoran declared. "No unauthorized alien lifeforms are permitted." He gestured to the security officers. "Capture those creatures for study. And escort botanist Zora back to medical containment." The security officers moved forward, drawing capture devices. The insect swarm dispersed, darting toward the ventilation shafts. The one on Zora's palm flew upward, rejoining its brethren. "Wait!" Zora called out. "You don't understand what's happening." As one of the officers reached for her arm, Zora's body pulsed with golden light. The officer stumbled backward as if pushed by an invisible force. "I'm sorry," Zora said, genuinely distressed. "I didn't mean to." "Stun her," Zoran ordered. Lieutenant Pax stepped between Zora and the Viridian officers. "Chancellor, I must object. She just saved this entire station. She deserves to be heard." "Stand aside, Lieutenant," Zoran commanded. "This is a Viridian matter. She is a citizen of our world." "She's also under the protection of station security," Pax countered, not budging. "And I'm the ranking security officer present." Tension crackled in the air as the two sides faced off. The plants around them seemed to respond to the conflict, their movements becoming agitated, vines twisting anxiously. The standoff was interrupted by Commander Reed's voice over the intercom, "Attention all personnel. The ECS Prometheus has arrived ahead of schedule and is requesting emergency docking procedures. All section chiefs report to the command center immediately." Chancellor Zoran's facial membranes flickered, a sign of frustration among Viridians. "This isn't over," he told Pax before turning to leave. The security officers followed reluctantly. When they were gone, Pax turned to Zora. "You need to tell me everything. Now." Zora nodded, her expression grave. The Harmony has existed for millions of years, traveling between star systems, seeking out worlds rich with life. They're caretakers, guardians of biodiversity across the galaxy. And they chose you because Viridians have always had a special connection to plant life. It's why we became the botanists and ecologists of the intergalactic community. But I'm something more now. A bridge between species, between different forms of life. She looked up at the ventilation shaft where the insects had disappeared. They didn't come here by accident. They've been watching our station for months, studying the cooperation between humans and Viridians. They were looking for someone who could understand both perspectives. To what end? Pax pressed. Zora's expression darkened. Because something is coming. A threat to all life in this sector of the galaxy. The Harmony calls it the Withering, a cosmic pathogen that destroys the connection between sentient beings and the ecosystems they depend on. That sounds apocalyptic. It is. They've seen it before, on distant worlds. Entire civilizations collapsing as their biological systems fail. Plants, animals, microorganisms, all connection between them severed. And now it's headed for our worlds. Pax processed this information, his tactical mind already considering defensive strategies. How long do we have? Months, perhaps a year. The Harmony isn't certain. And they think you can stop it? One transformed Viridian botanist against a cosmic pathogen? Zora smiled sadly. Not alone. I'm just the first. The vanguard of what they call synthesis, the merging of sentient consciousness with the Harmony network. There will be others, if I succeed. The station's alert system suddenly activated. Security teams were being deployed throughout Concordia. The Prometheus had docked. We need to go, Pax said urgently. If what you're saying is true, we can't let Earth military get hold of you. Where would we go? The station is locked down. Pax's expression hardened with resolve. I have access to the emergency shuttles in Hangar B. But we need to move now. As they slipped from the botanical laboratory, neither noticed the small surveillance drone hovering in the corner, transmitting everything to the newly arrived team from Earth. Colonel Victor Drayson reviewed the footage with cold interest as his team finished disembarking from the Prometheus. A tall, imposing figure with cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples, Drayson had built his career on weaponizing alien biology for Earth's military advantage. Fascinating, he murmured, watching Zora communicate with the golden insects. The potential applications are extraordinary. His second-in-command, Major Helena Voss, studied the biometric readings attached to the footage. Her cellular structure has been completely rewritten. The integration of alien DNA is unlike anything we've documented before. And her connection to plant life? Drayson asked. It appears to operate on a quantum level, Voss replied. She's not just communicating with the plants, she's merging her consciousness with them somehow. Drayson smiled thinly. Imagine deploying soldiers with that capability. An army that could transform any environment to suit its needs, that could weaponize the very ecosystem against an enemy. Sir, if what she said about this withering is true, then we have even more reason to secure her and these insect specimens immediately, Drayson interrupted. If a cosmic pathogen really is approaching, Earth needs every advantage we can get. He turned to the assembled tactical team, 12 soldiers equipped with specialized containment gear and non-lethal weapons. Your orders are simple: capture the Viridian subject, designate Zora, alive and unharmed. Secondary objective is to secure specimens of these insects. Use of lethal force is authorized against anyone who interferes, human or alien. As his team moved out, Drayson added, and find Lieutenant Pax. He appears to have decided where his loyalties lie, and it's not with Earth. Meanwhile, Zora and Pax navigated through rarely used maintenance tunnels, making their way toward Hangar B. They had almost reached their destination when Zora suddenly stopped, pressing her hands against the wall. "What is it?" Pax whispered, scanning the tunnel behind them. "The station," Zora replied, her eyes wide. "It's trying to communicate with me." "The station? You mean the computer system?" "No. The station itself, the living components. The algae in the water recycling system, the bacteria colonies in the waste processors, the experimental bioplastics in the hull. They're all connected, all part of Concordia's ecosystem." Her golden patterns pulsed rapidly. "They're warning us. Drayson's team has deployed a neurotoxin in the ventilation system. It's specifically designed to target the insects." "How would they have something like that ready so quickly?" "They didn't," Zora said grimly. "They adapted it from a pesticide in the agricultural section. But it won't just affect the insects, it's already damaging the microbial balance throughout the station." As if to confirm her words, alarm klaxons began to sound. The station's environmental status displays flashed red as system after system registered critical failures. Commander Reed's voice came over the emergency channel, tension evident even through the static. "Attention all personnel. We have a station-wide biological contamination event. Critical life support systems are failing. Prepare for possible evacuation protocols." Pax grabbed Zora's arm. "We need to get to that shuttle now." "No," Zora pulled away, her expression resolute. "If I leave, Concordia dies. Everyone on this station dies. I have to fix this." "How?" "This isn't just an atmospheric malfunction, they've poisoned the entire ecosystem." "The Harmony can help," Zora said. "But I need to reach the Central Environmental Control Hub. That's right next to the command center. Drayson's team will be swarming the area. Then I'll have to move quickly." Zora's eyes glowed with golden light. "The plants will help us." Elsewhere on the station, Dr. Novak was frantically analyzing the spreading contamination in the environmental lab. "This makes no sense," he told Dr. Thelix. "The toxin should have been contained in the botanical sections, but it's spreading throughout every biological system on the station." Because the systems are all connected, Dr. Thelix realized. Just as Zora described, the station is a single ecosystem, not isolated components. The lab door slid open, and Chancellor Zoran entered, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "This is your fault," he accused. "If you had secured the alien botanist as I ordered." "With all due respect, Chancellor," Dr. Novak interrupted, "Zora didn't cause this. Colonel Drayson's team deployed an experimental neurotoxin without proper containment protocols. And now we're all paying the price," Dr. Thelix added. "Life support will fail completely within 3 hours unless we can neutralize the toxin." In the command center, Commander Reed confronted Colonel Drayson. "You had no authority to deploy biological agents on my station." "This operation has Omega-level clearance," Drayson replied coolly. "My team is acting under direct orders from Earth Central Command."